So, by request from yesterday, yeah, I could do a video on Chris Pronger. There you go. He is one of the more controversial figures to be in the Hall of Fame, and yet he is not anywhere near, in my eyes, necessarily the dirtiest player that's in the Hall of Fame. I think there were plenty of guys who were dirty players back in, say, the 30s, 40s, 50s that we don't have a lot of the video footage, but we have books. I have books, anyways, which tells me about some of the really ugly incidents that took place before we had videos from all different angles. And so Pronger, kind of a throwback. He's number 2 pick in 1993 behind Alexander Daigle, who was drafted, of course, by Ottawa. And that would be a question that was asked for years. What if Ottawa drafts Pronger instead of Daigle? What might have happened? How much better would the team have gotten? How quickly? And would Pronger have stayed in Ottawa, or would he ended up moving on anyways? His start with Hartford, it was rocky. 81 games, 5 goals, 25 assists, 30 points. But there was too much pressure on him out of the gate. Too much expected of him, and it's a team that's not very good. The Hartford Whalers really struggling. 94-95, lockout shortened season, 43 games played, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. And I remember it looked like he was kind of going backwards. Big player, a lot of talent, but you could see that in Hartford it wasn't necessarily the best fit. So, seeing that it wasn't the best fit, Hartford decides, Brian Burke decides, we're going to make the trade. Trades him to St. Louis for Brendan Shanahan on July 27th. And that looks like a sound move for both teams. St. Louis gets an up-and-coming defenseman. They get rid of an expensive contract. St. Louis was kind of known for being the millionaires club at that point. And Hartford picks up a really solid forward in Shanahan. Now, his first year with the Blues, Pronger, the totals are not remarkable yet. 78 games played, 7 goals, 18 assists, 25 points. But Mike Keenan wants him to work more on the defensive side. So he's got the offense, he's got all the skill, wants to work more on the defensive side of the game, and he does that. 96, 97. Oh, and in the playoffs, he makes his playoff debut. He didn't have playoffs, obviously, in Hartford. 13 games, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points. His first year in the playoffs for St. Louis. So year 2 in St. Louis, 79 games, 11 goals, 24 assists, 35 points. And in the playoffs, 6 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. And you can see he's getting better. You can see that he's improving. You can see that he's on the right track. That Pronger is now in St. Louis where he belongs. 97, 98, 81 games played, 9 goals, 27 assists, 36 points, and he finished 3rd in Norris voting. So he's hitting everything like a Mack truck, and the hits are sometimes part of the issue, where sometimes he's crossing a line. He might be crossing the line with the stick. We'll get to other line crossings that happened in his career that he's remembered for. And he's dishing out the hits and the punishment along the way. 10 games played in the playoffs, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points, and he's on the second team in terms of second team All-Stars. 98-99, plays 67 games, 13 goals, 33 assists, 46 points. So now the offense is showing up. He misses about 15 games with an injury, but he's 4th in Norris voting that year. In the playoffs, 13 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, and 5 points. So yeah. In the playoffs, 13 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. But it is the next season where he hits legend status. 79 games played, 14 goals, 48 assists, 62 points. And this is easily his best season over his career. Norris Trophy winner, Hart winner. And there was a lot of buzz about St. Louis 99-2000 about Stanley Cup. Stanley Cup was mentioned a lot with the Blues because you have McInnes and you have Pronger here. And you have a really good team. They're going to get there. That was the question. And 7 games played in the playoffs, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. They get taken out in the first round, but he's a first-team All-Star. He wins the Norris. He wins the Hart Trophy, which is rare for defensemen. And he had a plus 52 that year. So even if you're not a big plus-minus fan, you have to be impressed with plus 52. Tells you he plays a lot. He plays well. There's not a lot of goals going in when he's on the ice. And again, a lot of hitting going on. Now, he misses some games in 2000-2001. 51 games played in total, 8 goals, 39 assists, 47 points. So offensively, great season. In the playoffs, 15 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. Not a lot of Norris attention because he missed so many games. You miss over 30 games, you generally don't get a lot of attention for a major trophy. 2001-2002, he misses very little. He played 78 games, he only missed 4. 7 goals, 40 assists, 47 points. He's 5th in Norris voting that year. In the playoffs, 9 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. But he's getting banged up. So he needs knee surgery and wrist surgery. during the 2002-2003 season, prior to the season, during and all that. 5 games played in total during the regular season, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. In the playoffs, 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. If you're a Blues fan, you know the general rule with the Blues at this point was to perform really well during the regular season and then disappoint in the playoffs. And it was honestly, I would think heartbreaking for most Blues fans to watch this year in and year out. 2003-2004 would be his final year with St. Louis. 80 games played, 14 goals, 40 assists, 54 points. He's third in Norris voting that year. 5 games played in the playoffs, and he has 1 assist. He's on the second team. So he's traded. They go, you know what? We're going to blow it up. And they trade him to Edmonton. He's traded to Edmonton for Eric Brewer, Doug Lynch, Jeff Wojciechowski on August 2nd of 2005. So he's a Blue technically through the 04-05 season that doesn't happen. And then as we're getting ready to come back for the 05-06 season, the Oilers go in and grab him. And Brewer was a highly thought of defenseman at the time, and Brewer was a decent pickup for the St. Louis Blues. Not too shabby of a pickup. Was it even? No. No, it's not an even trade, but at least they got somebody who was on their roster for a while. That 05-06 season for the Oilers, dream season for Edmonton. 80 games during the regular season, 12 goals, 44 assists, 56 points. They just sneak into the playoffs. But they proved all you have to do is get there. They go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, 24 games, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points for Pronger, who may very well, if they had won that series and won the Stanley Cup, may very well have won himself a Conn Smythe trophy. And he's a hero to the Edmonton fans and to the Oilers. And finally, after years of the Oilers being kind of an also-ran and not a great team, now things are getting better. It's going to be great now, right? But June 23rd, it's announced he's made a trade request, and all that falls apart. That trade request, where did it come from? Well, rumor was that his wife wasn't happy living in Edmonton, did not want to stay in Edmonton, and he's saying, happy wife, happy life, right? Which is accurate, absolutely accurate. But whether or not, and I don't know that that was ever 100% confirmed, but at that point, he goes from being a hero to public enemy number 1 in Edmonton. And I remember it wasn't necessarily all that pleasant towards her as well. So for Edmonton now, they're in a position where they have to trade him, and everybody knows they have to trade him. And so they make a trade. He goes to the Anaheim Ducks. Now what do the Oilers get back? They get back Joffrey Lupul, keep that in mind. 2007 first, and another first-round pick the following year, which would become Jordan Eberle. So that's not too bad of a pickup. A second-round pick would be traded to the Islanders. The Islanders would take Travis Hamonic. A 2008 2008 draft, and that's it. So they get 2 firsts and a second, and Joffrey Lupul, and that was on July 3rd. So it's 10 days after he makes his trade request, he's traded to the Anaheim Ducks. And if you're an Oilers fan, you're going, great, because the Ducks already had Niedermayer. Now they have Pronger. They have a number 1 and 2 on the blue line, who are both Hall of Famers. And at this point, they've already got Hall of Fame careers put together. And we all know that going into that season, Anaheim should be the prohibitive favorite. So 06-07, he only played 66 games, so he misses 16 that year. 13 goals, 46 assists, 59 points. Amazing offense from Pronger that year. Third in the Norris Trophy voting, and of course, he wins the Stanley Cup. So the only way this gets worse for the Oilers and their fans is not only did they trade him a year after going to the finals, he wins the Stanley Cup, and the Oilers not really in the conversation in 2007. He plays 19 games in the playoffs, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points, and he's a second-team All-Star that year as well. And this is where it absolutely solidifies him as, yeah, he needs to go in the Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible. 2007-2008 plays 72 games, 12 goals, 31 assists, 43 points. In the playoffs, 6 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. What always interested me with Anaheim after the 07 Cup win was that Brian Burke rightfully got a lot of credit for that. And he should have. But the team just seemed to make moves after that that didn't maintain that elite status. And you could see in 07-08 it was already starting to fall by the wayside. 08-09, 82 games, 11 goals, 37 assists, 48 points. In the playoffs, 13 games played, 2 goals, 8 assists, and 10 points for Pronger. And then he's traded. June 27th of that year. So he's been traded July here, August here, June here, June here. He's not a guy who gets traded in the middle of the season. This is his last trade as an active player. He's traded with Ryan Dingle for Joffrey Lupul, Lucas Spiza, a 2009 first, which would be traded to Columbus. They take John Moore, and a 2010 first, which was Emerson Edom. Kid had a lot of speed. You've got to admit, Edom had a lot of speed. And future considerations as well. So that's on June 27th of 2009. He moves on to Philadelphia. The Flyers, they're thinking, all right, we're picking up a guy who's a veteran. He's got some bumps and bruises here and there, but he's that big, tough blue liner we like, and it works. Pronger as a Flyer works. He matches the Broad Street Bullies type mold, right? 82 games played his first year in Philly, so he doesn't miss a game 2 years in a row there. 10 goals, 45 assists, 55 points, and he looks great. They go to the Stanley Cup Finals that year too. 23 games played in the playoffs, 4 goals, 14 assists, 18 points. The sky's the limit for the Flyers and for Pronger. They got there with mediocre goaltending. And that's where the conversation came from at that point of, do you really need to pay for a big money goaltender, or do you just need adequate goaltending and a really good team in front of them? And the answer was, no, you still need pretty good goaltending. We would find out the following year when Tim Thomas won a Stanley Cup, good goaltending is important. So 2010, 2011, of course, 2010, they went through Boston. They were down 3-0. They won 4 in a row. And then the following season, they would lose against Boston. But Pronger didn't really play a role in that. He only plays 50 games in the regular season that following year, 4 goals, 21 assists, 25 points. So when he plays, he's still productive. In the playoffs, he only played 3 games, and he had 1 assist in those 3 games. So again, he's starting to miss time. And we're starting to hear talks about the concussions adding up. And the concussion discussion that's in the NHL, I really didn't mean to make that rhyme, but we'll let it go. The conversation we've been having about discussions, put it that way, about concussions, it really gets going around Pronger. And yet we've discussed Pronger throughout his career and the fact he's dished out concussions. 13 games played that last season, 1 goal, 11 assists, and 12 points. And all the hits have added up, and the concussions have added up. He ends up on the safety, NHL's player safety team group, and there's definitely some chuckles at that at the time, because again, he's dished out so many concussions as a player. He's crossed that line a lot as a player. And so the debate can be had, are you best suited to bring a guy in who's crossed that line to say, yeah, I shouldn't have been able to get away with this, and here's the damage I inflicted? Or do you bring him in because he's had the damage inflicted on him? Or do you look at it and say, well, wait a minute, it's both. So, yeah, you guys can decide. He played 1,167 games in his career. 157 goals, 541 assists, 698 points. The points total for a defenseman is very good, considering he's known more for the bone-crushing hits, for playing about half the game every night, for being able to do a little bit of everything, for his leadership on and off the ice. And he was named as one of the NHL's 100 greatest players in 2017. And yet, he's also known as one of the dirtiest. He's suspended 8 times over the length of his career. 8. And there were suspensions I thought should have been longer. And there's 2 I've got on the board here that I thought should have probably been longer than what they were. He got 8 games for stomping on Ryan Kesler. Now, Ryan Kesler was not an overly popular player with other hockey players. He was known for talking when he should have been listening. And when that happened, there were certainly probably some players around the NHL that said, checks out. And this was after Jesse Boulerice, of course, had sticked him in the face that same year. So Kesler definitely took his share of abuse on the ice. And that's part of how his career gets shortened. But the stomping, it didn't look great. And Chris Simon had gotten 30 games that year for something that was not entirely out of line. So while he got suspended 8 times, the question was, well, what more did he need to do? In 2007, he had a hit on Holmstrom, which is one of the few hits that's ever brought me out of my seat, because I thought it was really dirty. And then the NHL suspended him 1 game. Now, as fans, most of us looked at that and said, that should have been more. Brian Burke, the general manager at the time, said he shouldn't have been suspended at all. Might have been a little bit high, but it shouldn't have been a suspension. And so that's the debate that's out there. And of course, GMs will always defend their player. GMs don't come out and say, yeah, no, our guy definitely should have been suspended for that. Unless it's a case of a guy leaving the bench to join a fight. And it's, yeah, that's fine. That's what the rule is. So there's definitely the debate to be had about whether or not he was suspended enough or long enough. And there were a lot of hits that happened with Pronger that people would scream and yell about that he didn't get suspended for. So when we have the discussion now about a guy like, Tom Wilson would be the obvious target now that people say, oh, that hit and this hit. And back in the day, of course, Matt Cook, anytime that he threw a hit, you would see that microscope. And it's justified. It's justified with players that are known to have crossed that line before. Pronger crossed that line, which is a shame because his overall career, is Hall of Fame worthy. His number's supposed to be retired this coming season by St. Louis. Now, whether or not that gets pushed back, depending on fans in attendance, what happens with this season and all of that, we'll see. But it's supposed to be retired during this season by the St. Louis Blues. And I wore a Blues jersey even though he won the Cup with Anaheim because I remember him mostly as a Blue. He was there for 9 seasons. And he was one of their best players while he was there. He's an interesting figure in hockey world, right? And definitely Hall of Fame worthy, and definitely conversation worthy as well. So there you go. Odds are if he played on your team, he was one of your favorite players. If he was playing against your team, he was probably one of your least favorite. And he's one of the players that can elicit that kind of response from fans. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.